Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. Bad leftovers and fancy cars do not mix. About 7 or so years ago, I was living in an apartment complex with my wife and a few roomies. It was one of those places that had just enough parking spaces for the people that lived there, so parking could be tight. So when someone, say, parked over 2 spots or parked really close to the line, people took notice. In this complex, we had maybe 3 or 4 handicapped spaces, a few in the front, and one next to each walkway entering the complex in the back. Where our apartment was, it was closer for us to park in the back close to where one of these spots were. We did not need the handicapped space. The handicapped space was right next to a walkway, which led to the entire right side of the complex. The walkway doubled as a van access space for the handicapped spot next to it. For a few weeks, this one guy, we will call him Bob, parked in the marked-off van access space with his very expensive car. Bob would park so far up the ramp that you had to sit up the curb and onto the grass to get around his car. He was treating it like his own personal parking space. People did not park there for a very good reason, since it was a major walkway for half the complex. People carried groceries in via that pass, moved in and out via that pass, and just generally got to the parking lot via that pass. Even more so, most of us knew that one of the apartments right next to that ramp belonged to a little old lady that had to use oxygen canisters. We knew that from seeing her, and the sign bolted into the wall next to her front door saying as much. Fully within view of the walkway, she had lived there so long the handicapped space that was back there was labeled hers. I personally saw her struggle to get around the car once, as well as other people moving boxes or furniture. None of this even fazed Bob. He would keep parking there and ignore anyone else's problems. We complained to the office, who just told us to call the tow truck. We called the tow truck and they did not show. And Bob continued to treat the ramp as is his personal, private, exclusive parking lot for his quite new, quite expensive-looking car. One day, while going out to eat and whatnot with the wife and roomies, Bob was parked there again. All 4 of us were upset by it and a few comments were made. We got into our car conversation still on Bob's weird behavior. I had placed the key into the ignition and was ready to start the car when I remembered something. There was something in my trunk. Something bad. I opened the door and got out. The wife called to me. "What are you doing?" She knew something was up, but I wasn't ready to fess up yet. She might try to stop me. I opened the trunk and I found it. It was a Tupperware. Inside was a leftover lunch. The leftover lunch was a full helping of ham, potato, and cheese casserole. Not the best meal that my wife had made, and she admits it. But when she had made it like 6 months before, I took it to work with me and ended up eating something else. After which I promptly forgot the Tupperware in my trunk, where it lovely percolated for the next 6 months through one of the hottest summers our area has ever had. Every time we saw it in there, we'd always grimace and comment on how we needed to throw it out. But we didn't. Like we instinctively knew it had a higher purpose. The weapon. Because it could only be that anymore. Sloshed with what I thought could have been water in the Tupperware as I walked to Bob's car, I stopped in front of his car, standing on the walkway. I popped the lid open and almost vomited at the smell. I turned my head and took a deep breath through my mouth, and the air held a tang to it that I could only assume was still part of the weapon. I steeled myself, moved my arm out to the side and threw the contents of the weapon towards the hood of the car like I was sowing the seed of sweet revenge. The thing I remember best about the next few moments is that the contents that came out of the weapon did not make a splash sound. A wet thud was what I heard. It struck the hood, dead center. The momentum carried the sludge up the hood and onto the windshield, then slid back down onto the wipers and air intake. I took the now empty container and hurried away, still holding my press. I found the closest dumpster and threw it inside. Only once I was halfway back to the car where my wife and roomies were in, did I take a press. I got into the car grinning like an idiot. The wife asked again, "What did you do?" Echoed by a roomie while the other said, "Should we be worried?" I just said we should go. The wife said, "Oh God." And one of the roomies said, "Rick, what did you do?" And the other one nervously giggled. We went and got our food. While doing that, I explained what it is that I had done to them. We headed back and parked in a space a bit farther away from where we had before. We took our usual route back to the apartment out of habit, which took us towards Pop's special parking space. In hindsight, we shouldn't have done that. I saw Bob on his cell phone looking at his car. I spun on my heels and started walking the other way, right past the wife and roomies. They looked at me confused and asked where I was going. I said nothing and just kept going. They followed me to another route into the complex that was much farther away, but gave us a clear look at Bob from behind as we got close to our apartment. Bob was talking to someone and it was very clear he was not happy. I never got close enough to hear what he said then. I just quietly and quickly opened the apartment door, and before I was able to go inside, I saw Bob get into his car and drive off. I can only assume to clean off the warfare I had sprayed over his car. I sometimes wonder if he thinks someone did that on purpose, or if someone just got really sick, like CDC level sick. After that, Bob never parked in his special space again, and it remained open for as long as we lived there. Next story. Lady comes into ER, claims assault, and gets arrested. I want to start off by saying that I work in a hospital. So due this and HIPAA, I will be altering names of all the characters in our little play. With that being said, I happen to work security for a hospital in the town I live in. Let's call it Loserton. We are contracted out by our employer to the local hospitals. Usually we have 3 shifts, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., and my shift 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. During my shift, usually we have homeless individuals come in saying they are hurt, but in reality they just want some sleep in their rooms. This is actually alright, except because of COVID. The nursing staff is not having it, and this is not as important because our main player, Karen the old hag, always comes in on the ambulance. Basically, whenever she comes in, she stays for about 3 hours, gets discharged, and then sits in the waiting room. We are always called to escort her off, and it always ends up with the cops being called on her. She always has the same excuse. I cannot walk. I do not have kneecaps. You try walking without kneecaps. This goes on and on. To be fair to her, she does walk with a cane. However, we always remind her that she did just walk from her bed to the waiting room and that the nursing staff was walking with you to make sure you do not fall. Whenever she feels like she's going to lose her battle, she will throw her cane at anyone close to her and throw herself on the ground. Mind you, this lady is like 87 years old and she acts more like a child than my 3-year-old niece. During the night, we had a hold for a patient that was prone to hurting themselves. We just sit outside the room to make sure they do not either hurt themselves or make a run for it. It is policy that involuntary holds cannot leave until our mental health finds them a bed anywhere. We always alternate every 2 hours to make sure none of us get burned out. Plus, we have these things called posts, where we are supposed to be for 2 hours anyways. Karen came in on the ambulance as per her usual. Mind you, it is raining heavily, so when the ambulance picked her up, she was soaked from head to toe. According to the nurses, she was also very drunk. Karen plus alcohol equals 1000% Krabby Pants Ultra Godzilla. Once she gets into her room, Glinda, the good nurse, might as well go all out here, walks in and gets vitals and asks what happened. The ER tech, Bob the Builder, starts to get her the scrubs you get issued to change into. Karen throws a fit. She yells at the nurses because Bob the Builder is male, and she claims that earlier that night she was assaulted. So she doesn't want any male persons near her. Understandable. They oblige. Only problem now is that she's fallen back on her "I have no kneecaps," so she does not have to wear her scrubs. Great. Let us just stay naked and let the entire ER see you, lady. Midway through the shift, our newer officer called over the radio for us to come into the ER for a disruptive patient. We had no idea that Karen was in the hospital until me and an old guy walked back there. We walked to the monitor tech, who has been working in healthcare for like 60 years. Mrs. Nancy. She looks at us with the "I'm gonna kill someone, y'all better stop me" look. The old guy says, "What is going on, Mrs. Nancy?" And then we heard it. "I am not putting on my clothes because I can't. I cannot bend my knees." "Karen, you have to put your clothes on." "No, are you going to put it on me? I don't want you touching me." The old guy and I just looked at each other and rolled our eyes and sighed heavily. He went to talk to her and I stayed outside the room providing cover. I talked to the nurses and found out what had happened. I thought nothing of it, so I waited until the old guy was done talking to her, and once he was done, Mrs. Nancy wanted us to walk around the ER every 30 minutes or so. The shift is almost over, and it's now my turn to sit on the hold. I'm about 3 beds down when she starts screaming and hollering once she got the discharge paperwork. This is basically the ER stating, "We have done everything and diagnosed, and we recommend that you are stable enough to go home." Well, Karen was not having any of this. I get on the radio and call for the rest of the officers to come back to the ER. They walk up to me, ask what is going on, and all I do is point to the room she's in and say, "Might need to handle that." And sure enough, she decided she was not leaving, and threw her cane at Glinda, the good nurse. Because this happened, policy dictates that when a patient strikes a staff member, local law enforcement is called. Not a minute goes by and 4 squad cars pull up, lights and sirens blaring. This was funny to me because they just casually walk in like, "Hey guys, I heard y'all needed us." Once they heard her screaming, Officer Big B looks at the staff and just asks, "Is that the Karen?" "Yep." "You gotta be kidding me." He proceeds to rip open the curtain and at the top of his lungs, "Karen, get out right now before I take you to jail." But Karen is not budging though. She argues back and forth with the officer about how she was assaulted, how she cannot walk, how she cannot bend her knees, how she cannot get her pants on. They even gave her the option to put the gown on. Officer Big B nonchalantly states, "Karen, I saw you walking not 6 hours ago. Why are you like this?" "You're a freaking liar," Karen tells him. Fun fact, you can call cops a lot of different things. I know because I used to be a deputy in the other K-state. Big weirdo, bad C-word, coward, baby killer. But you do not call us liars and think you are about to win an argument. So you're telling me that my body camera, the dash cam and the rear dash of my patrol vehicle are lying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you're a liar.
She was told that she had been discharged, and if she refused to leave, she would be charged with trespassing and disorderly conduct. It took all of 30 seconds for all 4 officers to go into that room and handcuff her and place that gown on her body for transport. They threw all her belongings into bags and she was escorted outside. Old guy came and relieved me from my post-in. As I walked by the ambulance entrance doors, I could see the cops laughing and talking about their next post while she was in the back of the squad car with her head down, mouthing to herself. Honestly, as many times as we have to deal with her, it is nice when she leaves. It gets really silent at night, and that is the way we like it. They are now working on a warrant for repeated trespassing and harassment of hospital employees. Next story. My dad is the owner. Background. Long story short, 2 years ago, my white 50-year-old father bought a Vietnamese restaurant which we had been going to for years. Every Wednesday, my father and I get together for lunch at his restaurant. On busy days, we will walk in and clear off a table by the kitchen, which is usually covered in extra sauces and chili oils, and seat ourselves. This is also where staff sit when they eat on their breaks. On numerous occasions, we have had customers make snide comments, tell us we cannot do what we are doing, and so on. Usually not a big deal, and people hesitantly accept that my dad really is the owner based on staff reactions. We have had the occasional person who comes in and refuses to believe that a white guy can own a Vietnamese restaurant. I think my favorite was when an Asian woman finally just accused my dad of bribing a waitress to get a table ahead of the Asian women's party. Silly, I know. That is exactly what I did. In fact, I bribe everyone here every week. And the Asian lady did not understand. He was talking about paying out the staff's paychecks. But I was just laughing really hard. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.